answered by the resource persons. You can also raise your hand to speak during the slot for question and answers. Also, you may follow the webinar through the YouTube live streaming. Presentation will be available for download after 12 hours from the webinar. Thank you. Thank you very much. On behalf of the Executive Director of the Nile Basin Initiative Secretariat, Engineer Sylvester Matemo, I would like to thank all the panelists and welcome all the participants on this webinar about water supply and sanitation. The Nile Basin Initiative, in collaboration with the government of Uganda, is organizing a series of webinars in the 7th Nile Basin Development Forum. The Science Policy Practice Dialogue is organized to bring together MBI with its stakeholders from Nile Basin countries and around the world. The theme of this forum is deepening Nile cooperation, accelerating the achievement of SDGs in changing climate. The goal of the 7th Nile Basin Development Forum is to enhance transformation processes in projects that will contribute to the Nile Basin Initiative shared vision, which is to achieve sustainable socioeconomic development through the equitable utilization of and benefit from the common Nile Basin water resources. The themes under this 7th Nile Basin Development Forum are adaptation to climate change, water supply and sanitation, water resources management, basin investment plan, groundwater, water quality, and transboundary water governance. The Nile Basin is one of the most critical transboundary water basins in Africa, with the River Nile playing a crucial role and source for the most economic and social activities for the countries in the Eastern and Northeastern Africa. Water is the basic necessity of life, vital for human survival and well-being. It is a finite resource that is essential for drinking, cooking, bathing, and sanitation purposes. However, in many parts of the world, access to clean and safe water remains a luxury. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, and UNICEF, around 2.2 billion people worldwide do not have access to clean drinking water. These alarming statistics highlight the urgent need for action to address the water and sanitation crisis. The importance of water supply and sanitation cannot be overstated. Lack of access to clean and water lead to the spread of waterborne diseases, especially in vulnerable populations like children and elderly. Inadequate sanitation facilities also contribute to poor hygiene practices, further exacerbate the spread of diseases. So welcome to this webinar. Let us have fruitful presentations and discussions, and let us work together to incorporate these findings in our decision-making River Basin agenda. Thank you, and allow me again to remind you about this session, this webinar about water supply and sanitation. We will start with some few presentations. Then we will have a session of Q&A. Then after that, we will have a panel discussion. And finally, we will wrap up this important session. Thank you. And now allow me to request the first presenter. Allow me to request Dr. Felix to moderate this important session. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Felix.
Thank you, Dr. Budasi. Thank you for those introductory remarks to the day. Dear participants, dear panelists, good morning to you, all of you, wherever you're tuned in from. And you are most welcome to this discussion of this morning, where we shall focus on the water seminar 1, with the thematic area on water supply and sanitation, looking at water, energy, food nexus. As we have already been given, because the background, we know these seminars, this discussion this Nile Basin Development Forum is intended to foster a platform for science, policy, practice dialogue between members from different areas, both within the NBI region and also from wherever you may be tuning in from. So we are very happy, we shall be glad to share together on information, the current information, current level of knowledge, best practices, and we also start partnerships from these webinars. And above all, we also look forward to seeing most of you here in this beautiful city of Kampala as we shall start the on-site discussions later on. So in this webinar, our main questions that we'll be looking at, our focus of this day, what take home we have, we need to assess the contribution of the NBI and other partners and how far we have made progress to the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goal 6 on water and sanitation within the Nile riparian countries. And we also can discuss a little bit more on what are the challenges and opportunities for improving water supply and sanitation services within the Nile riparian states. To moderate this webinar is myself, Dr. Felix Tuinomuchunguzi. I'm an assistant commissioner in the Ministry of Water and Environment here in Uganda. And I've been in this practice for the last 20 years. So I'm happy to hear and share from all of you. We have a panel today of about so far 5 persons that expressed interest to be our panelists today. They'll be joining on as we go along. But whoever is not able to join, we shall find ways to make up the time. So we have a bit of more time. So as has been mentioned in the introduction, let us do all the presentations available. And then afterwards, we can have the plenary discussion where questions will be raised. Should you have any question that is burning and you want to put it forward, kindly post it within the chat, and then the presenters will respond to it immediately after when the plenary session is opened. If not, if you can hold on to it, then when we open the plenary, we shall kindly request you to put up your hand electronically, and then we'll be able to select you, and then you can make your remarks orally. In the meantime, we also encourage everyone, all participants, kindly also post your participation just for the record within the chat. You can see a number of colleagues already submitting their names in. So kindly give us your name and institution where you're working, just for our record. We'll be very happy for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, to start us off, I think I'll invite Mr. Tom Wako, who is going to give us an overview on the NBI contribution to the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goal number 6 within the Nile riparian areas. Mr. Tom Wako is a hydrologist with over 30 years experience, ranging from water resources assessment and analysis to transboundary water resources policy. He has spent the most recent years of his career trail in institutional strategic planning and programmatic coordination of transboundary water resources management and development interventions within the Nile Basin. So he's the right person with all the knowledge. His experience in program management, skilled in strategic planning, sustainable development, results-based planning, and budgeting. He qualified with a Master of Science with a specialty in engineering hydrology and water resources from UNESCO IT Institute for Water Education. So Tom, you're most welcome. Tom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Felix, and good morning all. The presentation is, let me put in presentation mode so that it's transiting. All right, so this presentation is as introduced by the moderator about the Sustainable Development Goals, providing an overview. As you know, the Nile Basin Development Forum 7 is the theme is centered around deepening cooperation and looking at the attainment of the SDGs. So really, this particular session is very, very important in the sense of giving context of how the forum responds to the SDG, especially SDG 6, which relates to water and sanitation. NBI, in the last 3-4 years, has conducted activities that are specific to SDG 6. And under our policy framework activities, we have done a study on the regional scale, which looked at the SDG 6 and how NBI is contributing, or regional institutions are contributing. So it is from that perspective that I'll share what came out of that study and maybe also inform the questions which have been highlighted by the moderator in the opening. So the purpose really is to share the contribution of the regional institutions and especially NBI on the attainment of SDG 6, clean water and sanitation. And as you know, the reporting of this SDG 6 is normally done at national level. So the regional institutions like NBI really inform the policy and assist communication on progress within the regions or Nile Basin regarding how the transboundary water management is faring in response to the SDG 6. So just as a reminder, SDG 6 is about clean water and sanitation. And within SDG 6, there are targets. Target 6.5 is about water management. And specifically, when we go to the indicators, indicator 6.5.2, it relates to the proportion of transboundary basin area with an operational arrangement for water cooperation. That is how it cascades to the level of monitoring the indicator 6.5.2. Again, as part of overview, this is looking at the SDG 6 global indicators. There are about 11 indicators, but for our business today, we want to focus on the indicator that relates to target 6.5, which is about water and sanitation. In it, there is one that is about integrated water resource management, 651, and the transboundary, proportion of transboundary area that is under institutional management, 652. And that will be our major concentration. So this is basically a listing of the different indicators that are within the SDG 6. The 6.5.2 about operational transboundary water cooperation arrangements has a criteria, a set of 4 criteria that have been established in order for a region or for a country to count that transboundary institutional arrangement to qualify to respond to SDG 6.5.2. One is that there should be a joint institutional body or mechanism in place. That is the point number one, criterion number one. The second one is that there should be formal meetings or a platform that provides for formal engagements, at least once a year. Then thirdly, there should be a plan or a joint or coordinated water management plan or joint activities have been set, something that is being implemented in the implementation of those activities. Then thirdly is about data, the exchange of data and information that takes place at least annually. So that there is that kind of exchange of information taking place. But in order for an arrangement to be counted, all the 4 have to be taken at once. It is important that if one of the 4 is missing, then you don't count that as qualifying to be a transboundary institution that is meeting the SDG 6.5.2. So it is very, very important to note that it's either all or 0, which makes it a little bit difficult for especially transitional institutions, which don't maybe meet annually or they don't have specific plans or strategies that are being followed. So any of these 4, if it is missing, there is a risk that it will not be taken as a transboundary institution fulfilling the condition 6.5.2 indicator. So under the studies that were done by NBI, there was a cross-border arrangements that was looking at what kind of arrangements are there that are cross-border and can be able to inform the kind of transboundary institutions that are being considered here. The first category is the Lake River Basin organizations that are in place. And for the Nile Basin Initiative, there are a number that are within the Nile Basin Initiative that are also in this category. For example, the Lake Victoria Basin Commission. Then we have the smaller rivers like the Kagera or the tributaries of the Nile, like the Kagera, like the Sio Malawa Malakisi, like the Mara, all those kinds of river basins or lake basins. Then we have cooperation committees, which are normally generic to specific purposes that are formed to respond to specific purposes. Then we have the special purpose vehicles. These are usually for infrastructure projects, like, for example, the recently almost finished Rusumo hydroelectric power. That kind of special purpose vehicle is important for facilitating the implementation and management of such projects. We did not include the project steering committees for development partner funded projects, as these are temporary and sometimes very short-lived, depending on the project duration. Within the Nile Basin, there are a number of arrangements that have been mapped. There are many organizations, as you know, within the Nile Basin that are operating, and sometimes with overlapping mandates and geographical areas of operation. We have one continental structure, and that is the AMCAL, and 7 regional economic communities that are operating within the Nile Basin. That includes, of course, the ESC, the IGAD, the EAPP, the COMESA, among others. Then we have 7 basin-wide or sub-basin-wide commissions or initiatives. Then we have 10 bilateral general cooperation committees, and we have 2 project-specific cooperation arrangements. We list them here. I will list them in the subsequent slides. Now, the roles of the RECs in these specific topics is really to create an enabling environment for transboundary water management cooperation, and this is done through a number of interventions. One of them is establishing specialized institutions for transboundary water management cooperation. For example, the Lake Victoria Basin Commission, which is under the ESC, and ESC is a REC. Therefore, the LFVBC is established as a specialized institution to handle the Lake Victoria water resource management issues and development. Then the Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization, that one is established also by ESC, which is looking at the management of the fisheries on the lake, in the Lake Victoria. The other role is, of course, facilitating establishment of cooperation arrangements depending on the needs that needs to be taken care of. Then, of course, when it comes to issue of legality, legitimacy, there is the issue of creating legal and policy frameworks that help in terms of facilitating these activities. For example, under the IGAD, that is the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, there is a water policy, which is trying to look at how the water issues can be attended to. Under the SADC, there is the regional water policy, or a protocol on shared water courses, which has also been established and is helping the countries there to manage the water courses. Then the Lake Victoria Basin Protocol, which enables now the Lake Victoria Basin Commission to operate under the protocol that is provided by the ESC. Then we have the basin or sub-basin cooperation arrangements, which also are very, very important in terms of ensuring the water availability and sustainable management of the water and the sanitation for all pursuant to SDG 6. Of course, the water basin or sub-basins, they look at the integrity of the water resources as a public good, and also try to intervene and bring in the ideas of knowledge and wisdom, which can help the countries to develop or to manage the waters within the permissible capacities of these natural resources. Therefore, this particular intervention of the basin or sub-basin provides that kind of knowledge, which is very important for the prosperity, for the future of the water resources within the basin. Within the Nile Basin Initiative, the LFEBC is the largest sub-basin mechanism, and currently the only lake basin organization that we have. Under the lakes Edward and Albert, there is that project under the NELSAP. They have also envisaged establishment of a lake basin organization, but it's not yet in place. Looking to the future, that could be one of the future lake basins that could be looked at. There are also several smaller sub-basin organizations, and these include the MARA, the COC TECO, the CO Malawi Malakisi, and others, which are also looking at formation of institutions which can help to sustain those particular catchments or sub-catchments. So we have the Kagera Basin, which had been formed in 1977, but dissolved in 2004. So it is being now under the Kagera Integrated Basin Management of the NELSAP. They are looking at how they can also maybe establish a similar organization which can help sustainably manage the Kagera Basin. Now, there is the role of the bilateral arrangements also in the promoting SDGs in the countries. Of course, the bilateral arrangements are very strong in the sense that they're instrumental in driving the interstate cooperation of transboundary waters, where the administrative boundaries, the bilateral arrangements are able to identify the key issues that needs to be attended to, and also be able to bring in the regional as well as the national context in terms of devising ways of how best they can be able to manage these shared resources, and thereby informing the monitoring of the SDG 6.5.2. Because once there is that bilateral arrangement, then there is a cooperation in terms of tracking and monitoring of this particular indicator. So several bilateral technical advisory committees exist within the Nile Basin matters, and these were established long time ago, and others keep being established as the need arises. I think for example, the CO Malawi Malakisi could be one of them that we would look at as bilateral. Of course, there are also others which are a little bit, for example, the one between Congo and Uganda in terms of the transmission of the power and things like that. And of course, if the projects between Uganda and South Sudan start on the Limuru, of course, there will also be need for establishing of bilateral arrangements. These kind of arrangements are very key in terms of monitoring 6.5.2 within the countries that share these resources. Also, some bilateral committees for general cooperation, including Nile matters, have been formed depending on the need, as I said earlier. And of course, the NELSAP has been very instrumental and active in terms of identifying and promoting these kind of cross-border arrangements and putting in place an enabling environment that can allow the management and development of key interventions which respond to the challenges of those specific areas. There are also project-specific arrangements, and these are also increasingly emerging for large-scale infrastructure. For example, the Rusumo Falls, Angololo, and others have formed these kind of arrangements which are looking at the management of these particular facilities. Also, the GAD, the Tripartite National Committee, that is, it's not an implementation mechanism, but it's a forum where information exchange and negotiation can happen for the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. So these are some of the project-specific arrangements that have been put in place to facilitate the monitoring of these specific activities. Here in this table, we attempt to list some of these arrangements that are in place. At the multilateral level, we have got the East African Community, which is looking at East Africa, the countries that now we have, I think, like 6 countries which are members of the East African Community. At intergovernmental, within the IGAD, we also have a number of countries, and about 60–70% of them are part of the Nile Basin. Then the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, the COMESA. We have very many countries. I think it is only South Sudan and Tanzania, which are not members to this. Then under the SADC, SADC has got 2 of its member states within the Nile Basin. That is DRC and the United Republic of Tanzania. Then we have the Economic Community for Great Lakes countries. Here we have Burundi, DRC, and Rwanda. Then under the basin and sub-basin organizations, we have got the Nile Basin Initiative, which is really providing the basin-wide framework for cooperation under the Nile Basin. We've got the subsidiary action programs, the Nile Sub and the Eastern Nile. The Nile Sub looking at the Equatorial Lakes sub-basin, and the Eastern Nile looking at the eastern part of the basin, which is mainly the Blue Nile and the Atbara. Then we have the Lake Victoria Basin Commission looking at the Victoria affairs in terms of the management and development, and looking how they can use those resources to accelerate development and prosperity of the region. Then we have the Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization, which is really looking at the sustainable management of the fisheries in the lake, and also doing a lot of research and work that can be able to inform the countries on how to have good practices in this fisheries management. We have the Organization for the Management and Development of the Kagera Basin, the KBO. That one was dissolved, like I said, but still under the Nile Basin, there are ideas of having the Kagera Basin institution that is based on the long-term ongoing river basin management of Kagera, which could help in terms of the IWRM and the development of the Kagera. We have the Lake Edward and Albert River Basin Organization. Also, it's emerging, and that's based on the recent phases of LEAF project, which looked at the water resource management as well as the fisheries in the lakes Edward and Albert, and have come up with very good ideas in terms of institutional management, in terms of the sustainability of the lake resources, and also looking at the overall catchment management, sustain the lakes, and having some kind of harmonization of the regulation on the lake. A lot has been done, and that has stimulated the thinking that there could be an institution which could holistically look at the management of the two lakes, and therefore create a platform where the two countries, DRC and Uganda, can work together on the good management of these two lakes. There are a number of bilateral arrangements, cooperation arrangements. Under between Sudan and Egypt, there is this long-standing permanent joint technical commission for Nile waters, which has been on, I think, since 1959, and has kept the two countries working together with staffing and the commission, I think, in Khartoum, and with staffing representation from the two countries. We have the Ethiopia-Sudan Technical Advisory Committee, which has also been standing and working on the shared interests of the Nile. Then we have the Ethiopia-South Sudan Technical Advisory Committee, also looking at especially the Barakobo-Sobat system of that side. Then we have the Ethiopia-Egypt Technical Advisory Committee. We have the DRC-Uganda, that's really looking at now the lakes, Edward and Albert, as well as the interconnection of power between the two countries. The COSTECO is looking at the wetlands management and the development within that catchment between Uganda and Kenya. The Mara Permanent Joint Technical Commission looking at the Mara management. Mara is also another river that flows into Lake Victoria, draining parts of Tanzania and Kenya. And these two countries now look at how they can be able to work together on that particular side also. Then the Charlie and Jipe Lake and Umba River, and then the Ethiopia, these are between Ethiopia and Kenya. Then Ethiopia-Kenya Joint Ministerial Commission, that one looking, of course, beyond the Nile, but also the Turkana, Lake Turkana, and the Rudolph area. The project specific, we look at the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, where we have that tripartite national committee that is looking at the exchange of information and providing a platform where the the three countries can discuss on how best to manage or to share information and address common interests on the facility. The Angololo Water Resource Development Project, this is really looking at the development of the Angololo subcatchment between Uganda and Kenya. The two countries have progressed in terms of implementation. They are looking at getting funding to do investments in that particular area, and they are looking at institutional formation that can help take forward these ideas and be able to have them better facilitated. Then Rusumo Power Company that has been established to look at the power management or power distribution and development on Rusumo Falls, that is between Burundi, Rwanda, and Tanzania. They are almost now at the commissioning stage, and we are really looking forward to this being as one of the first flagship investment projects under NBI. So that power company is very, very key in terms of taking this one forward. The Limur, this is the development or the bilateral between Uganda and Kenya, Uganda and South Sudan, and it's looking at a number of IWRM and development projects that are on that system of Limur and Aswa, and it has also moved forward in terms of getting the countries together in identifying common interests and being able to share institutional formations that can help take forward the investments that have so far been identified. So based on that study that was done by NBI, there are a number of recommendations or options that have come up that can help in terms of moving forward the cooperative arrangements between countries. One is developing a structured program to develop capacity on monitoring the SDG 6.5.2 and to raise awareness. And through this program, the reporting on SDG 6.5.2 will be improved, and the awareness and need of the kinds of information and the kind of reporting will be high, and therefore making it easy for the countries to report on SDG 6.5.2. By the way, the reporting on this indicator is solely the role of the countries. The regional institutions or the Nile Basin Initiative can only come in to provide information which can help to inform the reporting that is done by the countries on this specific indicator 6.5.2, but also be able to share information with the broader stakeholders on how the countries are faring in terms of this implementation. Then, of course, there is the issue of ensuring that SDG 6.5.2 reporting process reflects better the arrangements, conditions, and concerns arising in regard to interstate cooperation in the Nile Basin. And that comes, of course, out of these various platforms which are able to facilitate the reporting process. Of course, water being a cross-cutting public good, it has that role of, it is in most of the goals, the goals of the SDG, you find water is there. Once good reporting and understanding is gained on water, there is a chance of promoting efforts to deepen the arrangements at all levels in the basin. If you look at the goal on poverty, the goal on gender, the goal on peace and prosperity, all these you find there is a role that water plays. So reporting and doing good work on the water can also be a stimulator or a catalyst in terms of implementing the other goals of the SDGs. So in terms of conclusions and next steps, the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework warns that gaps in institutional capacity slows implementation of SDG 6. And thus, that capacity development functions as a key accelerator. So here, there is that recommendation that capacity development is very, very key in terms of attainment of SDG 6. Then the Global Acceleration Framework also notes the importance of data availability. Data is very, very key in terms of generation, validation, standardization of this data because of the sharing needs and the common understanding, and of course, information exchange, so that there can be that element of trust and confidence amongst the national decision makers, and that kind of transparency and openness that comes out of the data sharing facilitates the cooperation and trust among the countries. Of course, the Nile Basin Initiative also serves as a platform for sharing practical experience among member states. The 10 member states are able to share experiences through these various forums that have been established, and therefore facilitate the understanding on how the countries are faring in terms of the implementation. NBI can also provide an effective way of highlighting the multiple benefits of transboundary cooperation going beyond water, such as regional integration, peace, sustainable development, environmental protection, energy and food security, including, of course, responses to climate change that comes with the sharing of the information, and of course the benefit as a benefit for transboundary management cooperation. With that, I want to thank you, and I submit to you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Tom, for that presentation, elaborate illustration of our progress, NBI under Sustainable Development Goal 6. So we've had really, this is, as we mentioned from the start, this is a series on the Nile Basin Development Forum, taking stock of our contribution to achieving SDG targets and improving lives within the area. I take the pleasure to welcome all attendees who are also joining us. A number of you have already joined when we had already started. I warmly welcome you to this discussion, and we hope to have a very good and fruitful interaction together. As we said, this platform brings together science, policy, and practice to the same table, where we try to reflect and share on new knowledge, old knowledge, and above all, how we can improve cooperation within the Nile Basin towards accelerating the achievements of SDGs in a changing climate. So I think for purpose of very good time management, I think we agree that we shall have a discussion with all of us at the end when all the presenters available have already presented. So kindly, I said, can hold on to your question, write it down, take notes. If it's urgent, you have to run away, kindly post it within the chat. We shall take notice, and the presenters will respond to it when we go to the plenary session. So thank you. And once again, I call upon everyone, for the attendees, kindly, where you can, post your contact, your name and organization you work with for within the chat, so that we all know who is here. But otherwise, I'm very excited on the wide diversity of attendance from all over the world. Thank you for joining in. We look forward to good discussion. So right now, I'll take the honor to, I think we're having heard now from the regional level corporations, we can now listen in to some of the specific issues affecting water and sanitation services delivery within the region, upon which I kindly invite Mr. Moses Asimwe, who is going to give us an overview now from the Uganda perspective with the presentation on a national level wash systems assessment in Uganda. Mr. Simwe is a monitoring and evaluation specialist with over 15 years of professional experience and has worked both in government and non-government actors, supporting design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of development interventions within WASH. Therefore, is a man who knows very well what he'll be talking about. He currently works with the IRC, International Water and Sanitation Center, as a monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning manager. And he has previously worked in quite a number of other organizations. He holds a master's degree in management studies, postgraduate diploma in monitoring and evaluation, and a degree in development studies. He's passionate about resource-based management and socioeconomic transformation of people's lives that are less privileged and underserved and most vulnerable in society. Moses, I think the purpose of everything that we are doing is to touch lives, and therefore, so we are in the right hands. Let's hear from you what the situation is in Uganda, what can be improved. Over to you, Moses.
I think we lost him, but we are expecting him to come back soon.
Okay, we lost him at the most crucial time, but he was around in the trials. Was this? Again, as I said, please, if you have a comment for Tom, kindly post it. Moderation will assist to take note of it.
He's there now.
Yes. Moses is back. Yes, very good. Yes, Moses, I hope you heard our introduction. We are very excited to hear what you have to share with us, as touching lives is really the essence of everything that we are trying to do within the basin and world beyond. So Moses, with your wide experience in WASH, kindly share with us the Ugandan situation. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. I believe I can be heard, and sorry about the technical glitch that I had a while ago. Please confirm that I can be heard.
Loud and clear. Please proceed.
Can you please raise your voice?
Can
Can you please check your laptop or PC and raise the volume?
Yes,
can you talk loud? Okay, just maybe try to talk louder.
Is it any better now? Okay.
It can be better.
Thank you so much.
Oh.
Let me try it adjust a little bit. I believe that's now much better.
Yes.
Okay. My presentation is about the National Wash System Assessment Report of 2021. And in terms of presentation outline, we shall briefly look at the brief background about the assessment, the aim of the assessment, the approach that was employed to conduct that assessment, the national SWOT analysis, and the actions that emerged from the assessment, and some of those efforts that have been registered to date in regard with the assessment that was conducted. As you may all be aware, WASH as a sector, like any other subsectors in Uganda, is guided by Vision 2040 and National Development Plan 3 that all look at transformed economy of Uganda from peasant to a prosperous economy by 2030. The key priority here is on achieving universal access to wash and sanitation services for all without leaving anyone behind. But as you may also be aware, that WASH, as highlighted by my colleague who spoke earlier, that some of these targets that were set seem to be off track. We seem to be living far away from that dream of realizing these targets as the 2030 grows nearer. For example, the national safe water coverage stands at around 70%, with rural coverage at 68% and urban coverage at around 72%. The sector continues to face inadequate funding of about 2-3% for each of the national budgets that are read. There are discrepancies in the standardizing the key performance indicators when you look at the country-specific performance indicators vis-a-vis the indicators by the Joint Monitoring Program of UNICEF and the World Health Organization. But at the same time, there has been difficulty in tracking WASH financing. It is scattered in different ministries, for example, Ministry of Water and Environment, Ministry of Health, and Ministry of Education, not forgetting other country programs where some of the WASH components lie. So what was that aim of why the assessment was conducted? This assessment was conducted under the partnership arrangement of WASH Agenda for Change. This brings together IRC, International Water and Sanitation Center, Water for People, Uganda Water and Sanitation Network, and Water Aid. and was done in collaboration with the Ministry of Water and Environment for specific 3 objectives. 1 was about support a collaborative approach. 2, to develop a collective action plan. And thirdly, to build consensus among WASH Agenda for Change partners on how to promote systems approach and practice. What was the approach that was employed? The approach focused on the 9 building blocks for sustainable WASH system that include institutional arrangements and coordination, service delivery, infrastructure, regulation and accountability, inclusive planning, finance, monitoring, water resources and environment, learning and adaptation, as well as demand behavior and political will. But in addition to looking at the different building blocks, there are also documentation, review of relevant documentation, key informant interviews and focus group discussion, as well as field visits to the concentrated units of the Ministry of Water and Environment, among other partners. So what were some of those key strengths that assessment did establish? 1 was about strong legal provisions for access to water, sanitation, and protection of natural resources, that these do exist. They established structures for water resources management, also the operation of grant structures by Ministry of Water, and also local government finance WASH programs. They do exist. They are demand-driven plans at Ministry of Water and Environment's regional structures, but also adoption of integrated water resources management approaches and the rollout of the catchment management structures at regional and local levels. What were some of the weaknesses that the national assessment did establish? 1 was that the funding to the WASH sector is not always updated in the sector investment plans. There are low levels of resourcing as far as umbrella authorities and the concentrated structures are concerned. The UPMIS, that is the Utility Performance Monitoring and Information System, whereas it is useful as a utility database, it only has data from the umbrella authorities and is not linked to the main national authority, which is the National Water and Sewage Corporation. Weak regulation of raw water supply that does undermine functionality, but also financing for sanitation, which remains far away from what is needed, and also weak enforcement of standards. Also, the other weakness was about the WASH CSOs reporting in terms of compliance, which is still a little bit low. In terms of opportunities that the assessment did establish, 1, that WASH CSOs do have the ability to raise funds, support program implementation, also improve the policy and practices through advocacy, especially when we look at the shift from the sector to program-based implementation in line with NDP 3, but also increased concern about climate change from all key players. At the same time, the Water and Environment Sector Working Group and the National Sanitation Working Group that do provide a linkage between water and sanitation and other environmental issues. Significant investments that are planned in urban and rural water supply, but also the solar-powered water supply and fecal sludge management that do offer prospects for new employment opportunities and the markets. The other opportunities that were established under assessment was the introduction of community-based maintenance system plus, the ongoing efforts by the Ministry of Water and Environment to integrate WASH sector databases, also the Climate Change Act, which does offer opportunities to develop effective responses to climate change, and the Water Resources Institute that falls under the Ministry of Water and Environment that continues to provide a platform for research and learning, and Uganda Water and Sanitation Network, which is an important mechanism for WASH SOs to share experiences and best practices in the sector. Multi-stakeholder engagement through joint technical reviews. And then what were some of those threats that were established under the assessment? There are a growing number of skills that are required in the sector that the sector is in short of, like the plumbers, the solar PV technicians, solar technicians, electromechanical technicians, among others. But also there's a thin line between regulatory and operational functions. The mega government resource allocation to the WASH sector, year in, year out, of 2 to 3% of the national cake, data integrity issues, and then a population growth and demands from the development of industries, including the oil and gas sector, that continue to pose potential threats if not managed well. Looking at the assessment, what were some of those key actions that emerged and what efforts have been registered to date? In February this year, under the Agenda for Change platform, which I said brings together IRC, International Water and Sanitation Center, the Uganda Water and Sanitation Network, Water for People, and Water Aid, did collaborate with the Ministry of Water and Environment to hold a workshop at Water Resources Institute to harmonize the different data collection and reporting tools that are in place. We are now in the process of validating the consolidated tool. The workshop is scheduled soon, and then we shall be piloted and then finalized and rolled out across the country in an effort to address the data integrity issues that were identified by the assessment. The gentleman standing there is Mr. Ojabo, the Assistant Commissioner from the Director of Water Resources Management, who was addressing the participants during the workshop to harmonize the tools. IRC and Water for People have a partnership agreement between the Ministry of Water and Environment, specifically to collaborate in strengthening the Water Resources Institute to deliver a cutting edge for water and environment capacity development programs. Under this partnership arrangement, in December last year, we did conduct a base course in WASH system strengthening for professionals in the sector, including government and non-government professionals. And this very year, the plans are underway to conduct a similar capacity building session focusing on building blocks for sustainable WASH system, and so many other capacity building sessions in the pipeline. Recently, on August 30th, we did hold a national dialogue on financing WASH, environment, and climate change. And this was as a follow-up of the recommendations that did emerge from the Uganda Water and Environment Week, which is an annual event of making sure that the government takes the lead in organizing such a kind of platforms to deliberate on issues affecting WASH, environment, and climate change, of course, bringing on board other key players in the sector. Extreme left is the country director of IRC, the National Sanitation Center, and extreme right is the country director of Water for People, and in between is the honorary member of Parliament for Uvuma, and also the member of the Natural Resources Committee during the dialogue. Also, IRC, working with Water for People, did organize and participated in All Systems Go Symposium that took place in Accra in Ghana. That was last year in October. And the focus of the thematic area, which was chaired by Water for People and IRC, was about the art of achieving universal and safely managed services. A number of stakeholders did participate, from the Ministry of Water and Environment, from the Ministry of Health, and from the National Planning Authority. Similarly, this year in The Hague, Netherlands, IRC, together with other partners, did participate in All Systems Connect. All Systems Connect also brought together different change makers in the sectors of health, climate, and other sectors to deliberate on a number of issues that do affect the sector and come up with appropriate options on how best to move forward. We continue to participate in the different national and regional fora. For example, recently we did participate in the Stockholm World Water Week, and we continue to participate in similar others. IRC was recognized as being part of the steering committee for the Enhancing Resilience Communities to Climate Change through catchment-based integrated management of water and related resources. What you see there in the picture was the award that was given to the country director of IRC, Ms. Jenda Murumba, for the technical support that she provided to the steering committee. Wash accounts is also another area of intervention where IRC has supported and participated. This assessment is aimed at understanding the investment efforts in the sector, but also looking at underlying operational costs. This was in the recent workshop that was held in Kampala, trying to understand this further using the trafficking tool that was developed by the World Health Organization. As I mentioned earlier, we continue to participate and support the Uganda Water and Environment Week, and we look forward to the 2024 week. What were some of the key recommendations that emerged from the assessment? There are quite several, but I just picked a few. Provision of long-term technical and logistical support to the deconcentrated units of the Ministry of Water and Environment, but also such concerted efforts among key players to ensure that lessons learned do actually influence policy and decision-making, but also supporting the CMA Base Plus rollout and development of value chains and markets around the use of appropriate technologies such as solar. We continue to support this. We were recently in Jinja participating in a similar workshop, and I believe there's also another similar workshop being organized by Whoever and Goal here in Kampala, where we are participating, but also supporting the district of Kabarole, where we have major programs of implementation. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. Back to you, moderator. I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Moses, for that outlook, the national situation in Uganda. We sincerely appreciate your partnerships and our partnerships specifically with civil society. When we work together, it really improves our delivery in the communities, and it shows that we are all pulling in the same direction. And the strength and weakness identified all help us to come up with better strategies on how to deliver better. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I welcome anyone new who maybe have joined in while presentations are going on. We continue to say that the mode we have adopted is that let us first get all the presentations, and then we shall have a session of deliberation afterwards. But if you have any urgent question need to put forward, or you think the webinar can be reflecting upon, please just post it in the chat. I've already seen a few questions put in. Panelists, please be preparing, look through them, and prepare your responses, which you'll give when we come to the discussion part of the webinar. Yes, we are doing quite well on time. I think we have so far only 2 more panelists who have confirmed in, who will be giving us additional short presentations, then to allow us enough time for discussion. So if you will allow, I will kindly request that we allow them to also make their presentations, and then we shall discuss at the end. Samuel, are you in?
I'm here.
Very well. Yes, thank you. Yes, now we've heard from the national level civil society. Now we want to dig a little bit deeper, and we go a little down into one of the areas. So Samuel will be presenting to us experiences in redesigning water springs in Uganda for sustainable water supply. Mr. Mutabi Samuel is a Chief Executive Officer of an NGO named Clean Water Farm. He leads social enterprise dedicated to ensuring sustainable water access in rural Uganda by modifying traditional spring sources. He has over 8 years of experience in water project development and execution, and is committed to addressing challenges in Uganda. Samuel has received a prestigious Junior Swiss Resource Award under his NGO, which shows that people have been appreciating what he's doing, and he has presented his success stories in very many countries across the world, in collaboration with Young Water Solutions International Organization, supporting young innovators in the WASH sector. He holds a postgraduate diploma in startup development from the Lutheran University of Applied Arts and Sciences, and pursued his academic interests in philosophy, political science at Makerere University. So, Samuel, we are honored to have you and to hear from you on your innovations in rural areas of Uganda. Over to you, Samuel.
Thank you very much. How do you activate presentation mode? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Click a slideshow.
Hello?
Yes, can you click slideshow?
Yes.
On the top of your screen, look at the menu. One of the menus is saying slideshow. Click it.
Slideshow. I see slide control.
Slideshow. Can you move your cursor leftwards? There.
Yes.
Down.
Yeah.
Slideshow.
Right below.
Oh.
Where your cursor is, you are close to slideshow. Click on it.
Yeah.
The second task on the right. Task on the right, on the top.
Oh, sorry.
There is home, team, tables. At the end, there is a slideshow and review.
I have seen it. Then from slide.
Presenter view.
Okay, let me present from like this for sure. I'm sorry.
First presenter
view. Once again, I'm Samuel. I work with, I'm a team lead at the Clean Water Farm. My presentation will look more like a pitch, not like an academic paper. And our focus is redesign. Oh. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay. Our interest is that we are working to increase access to clean water in rural communities. And by redesigning the traditional water supply, the water springs, to modify them into water-saving springs. I will focus on Uganda in particular. And in Uganda, currently we have 45 million people, and out of 45 million people, 83% of these people lack access to reliable, safe-managed water sources. That 83% of the people is equivalent to 38 million people, Ugandans, do not have reliable access to clean water. And more so, that a good number of people, 32% of them, have to travel more than 30 minutes to the nearest source of water where they can access the clean water a bit. And this time spent affects their work and the economy as well. At the Clean Water Farm, we have decided to modify the system that was most of the traditional water springs were built in 1990s when the population was less than 25 million people, and it was built to accommodate for a smaller percentage of people. And currently the population has increased, and the water spring that used to serve a few people now need to serve many people, and there is a lot of pressure on those springs. And unfortunately, these springs, they are free flow. Water keeps flowing. The water which can be saved to be used in times of high demand. And we are saying that traditional water springs, when we incorporate it with water storage tank, we can have sustainable water supply. And that's our mission. This is still the problem. Uganda's springs are free flow springs. Water keeps flowing, reduced water flow, and currently due to the effects of climate change, the flow of water has reduced. It is no longer flowing the way it used to flow, and especially during the dry season, people have to line up for water. And the springs do not provide adequate water for the growing population. What we do, we aim to provide consistent water supply, sustainable water management, and community resilience against water shortages. Because we believe that if this available water source, which also even people have to travel for longer distances, if we incorporate a storage tank, that the water that keeps on flowing freely, and we tap it and keep it for people to use it when we keep it when there is no demand, to be used when the demand for water is high, we can really have sustainable water supply. And When we go to our design, the design process, this is the design process. Our organization, the design process includes the sign assessment and planning, that includes where the water source is, the people that are supposed to be involved in the planning process for modifying this process. The tank size determination based on demand also includes the number of people that are in the community, or the population increase, the rate at which the population is increasing, the tank material selection, also where we are building, where the tank is supposed to build, the quality of the materials to be used must also be in line with the site. Then we integrating existing infrastructure to the new one, or that is water tank. Then we technical implementation includes the water in tank, where the water intake mechanism, the size of the flow, the storage specification, and the flow control system to manage the water supply. Our focus, environmental impact. If we do this, what environmental impact for sure do we hope to achieve? Our focus is to reduce strain on natural water resources, like we intend to utilize the water maximally and reduce the wastage of water. We intend also to preserve the local ecosystem, like if we design the tank and allow the vegetation to go and whatever, then we allow the ecosystem also to regenerate, and the potential for groundwater recharge. That is our environmental impact assessment. The local engagement. We are designing this, we are redefining these water sources with the knowledge of the community, and we use local expertise and knowledge in order to give it to promote the community ownership of this water supply, and also to enable them to manage them sustainably. That is what we call project ownership and sustainability, because if we use the local knowledge and the expertise, that means in case of any breakdown or anything, the community can be able to repair these broken systems and also own them. And the community resilience and cooperation, because the way we organize the community and we plan with them, and they mobilize resources and everything, we intend for sure to build the cooperation and the management and the leadership within the community to enable the management of water resources, particularly the water springs in the community. The challenges we have, though the modification of these water sources it is not costly, but also we have to agree that the communities under which we are modifying them, it may appear to be costly because the system itself may take us like 8 million to design the system. That means each family has to contribute. Therefore, we have the limited funding, the expert gap, because the people in the community may not be having the skills also to build these systems. We have to face it as a challenge. There is environmental concerns and community skepticism, because when you tell the community that this is what we are doing, we are going to modify your water source and you have to contribute a small amount of money, they will say, this one what we have has been working. But when you look at the problem, they have been suffering, raining on the water spring for hours, waiting for water, and some fighting even for water, then it becomes a need for us to do that. But the community, for sure, when there is still this smallest alternative, they tend to be satisfied with what they have. What can we do? The mitigation measures. We are seeking the external funding. If we get the external funding, we can implement this. The capacity building, we can develop the local human resource. The people who have been in construction, we can also train how to design these tanks. The masonry, the engineers, they can help, given that the resources also are there. Then the environmental assessment. Before we do anything, we have to do environmental assessment to see the impact. If we do this, what would be the consequences on environment? And we would like to do this modification without carrying any harm on environment. Then lastly, we foster community engagements and awareness, especially to ensure the ownership of these resources. How will these resources be sustainably managed? What we call sustainability and replication. The redesigning of these water springs by adding on the storage water tanks can be effectively sustained by local community involvement, ensure sustainability, proper maintenance, preserves long-term benefits. Proper maintenance, like training people to keep on washing the tank, and in case the tap is broken, they also repair, can preserve it for long-term benefits, and the system can be easily replicated in the neighboring regions. And that means that if we manage to construct like 3 systems in a particular location, other communities can easily copy and also do the same in other areas, including in other regions in East Africa and in Nile Basin communities. Then we also do the monitoring, the monitoring of these systems. Once we construct them, we keep on monitoring it to see how they are working, also gathering the information about how they are helping the people so that we can keep on changing and adapting and improving the system. And as I conclude, this test, when if we effectively manage to redesign these systems, the water system, it will enhance the water management and ensure the ecosystem preservation, consistent water supply, and sustainable resource utilization. And this is our focus to minimize the water wastage and ensure that all water resources are put in use and people do not have to wait on on the spring waiting for water. You know, when water is in print in the tank, even the pressure is too much, you come, you tap on the water and then you go instead of waiting for longer hours, and you go and do other things. Thank you. That was my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Samuel, for that good presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, that's good insight. Well, we are narrowing down. We started listening at the policy levels and the regions. We had some issues at the national level within in Uganda. We've zeroed down now to hearing some real action on the ground, and somewhere that contribution is very important. These are the initiatives that are really keeping life going, that are sustaining life in the villages, in the communities. We have this as a big challenges. So such springs are really very important to improving the lives of the people we serve. So we thank you for your initiatives, and we shall have more discussions. Thank you all colleagues who are posting your questions in the chat. I said, panelists, please open the chat questions. I'll be looking at these questions and prepare your responses. Encourage all, please, if you have any concerns, any questions, any remarks, any additions to any of the presentations that we have gone through up to this moment, kindly type in the chat, and the panelists will take note, and they will open our discussions when we open for more discussions. But also you can also keep a question well written down. We shall give opportunity at the end for you to raise your hand, and you can be selected to orally present your question. I believe we now have one more. We shall listen to one more case again at the ground level, within now village level. Now we shall listen to a presentation at a very low, at a household level, and then before we're going to the discussions. Renicha, are you on? Mr. Takome, did you manage to connect? Mr. Takome?
Please unmute yourself. You are muted. Salutakume. Please unmute yourself. You are muted.
Mr. Takome, are we still together?
We can't hear you, Mr. Lutakume. Can you check the volume on your laptop? Yes, I think now maybe you can talk. Hello? Can you go to the Q&A?
Mr. Takome, we are failing to get you. Mr. Renicha. Well, I think if we are unable to get Takome, maybe he's having technical challenges. Because he's right in. So once again, is there any other panelist who is ready? Mr. Takome? IT, are we trying to get in touch with him or can we proceed?
Maybe Tom is ready here from our side. If you have a question for him.
Tom
Wako, Mr. Tom Wako.
Okay, I think we shall now go into the Q&A session. If Mr. Takome manages to connect, he will be welcome to make some remarks. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, we can go into now a Q&A session for this part of the webinar. As we agreed at the start, so we have had three presentations. Mr. Tom Wako gave us a presentation on the regional perspective within the NBI area, and our contribution on how we are progressing with the SDG 6, specifically SDG 6.5, 0.2, and 0.1, which were a good general overview of the different multilateral and bilateral cooperative arrangements, institutions that we have within the NBI region. And I think that was a very good and informative discussion, kicking us off for the discussion. Then we had a presentation on the national WASH level, participation within Uganda, presented by Mr. Moses from IRC and civil society, which was, again, a good analysis for the situation in Uganda at the national level. And Mr. Samuel gave us a last presentation on redesign of springs at rural, to serve the rural community, which is quite a big challenge for us in Uganda. Unfortunately, those are the only presenters that we have managed to log in, have managed to come by. And most Uganda they give us a situation, I believe, across the NBI region. So now I want to hear from the different perspectives, from different, from all of you here tuned in into this webinar, and what could be the situation from your other areas. And as I say, this is in preparation for the physical meeting that is going to continue within the course of this coming month under the Nile Basin Development Forum 7 hosted by Uganda. So, should we, I'll invite now maybe first respond to prepare a question. Let's first respond to the questions that were received in the chat. I will invite the presenters, the panelists, to just respond to questions in that order, what was raised. After the questions in the chat, then I will invite everybody, please, if you have a concern, a question, put up your hand. I'll be able to select you, and then you can put your question. So let's start with Tom. Do you have access to the chat questions?
Yes.
Yes, please. Yeah, can they respond?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Tom.
Yes, I had one from Mr. Donald Kasongo. he was asking how the local governments can get involved in the participation in these regional initiatives. And the response here is that usually these regional initiatives are intergovernmental in the sense that the national or the federal governments are the ones that really interact at that level. But depending on the context, for example, the bilateral arrangements between, say, Uganda and Kenya or Uganda and DRC, the country can decide to have representation at the local level on the committee or the participation of those who participate in these particular initiatives. The decision is left with the governments, but the engagement really is at that national level, and the government can decide on how they make a formation in that kind of respect. For example, in Kenya, they currently have what they call the counties, and they have got very strong local governance at that level. So usually the county governance can also find a role in terms of implementing the projects that are bilateral on the ground, but also, of course, keeping in the fold the national governments. And usually there is what we call the focal point ministry or sector for each intervention, and that's the entry point into a country that an initiative engages. So through that entry point, the institutional focal point, they can be able to identify the appropriate participation at the country level, which could also include the local authorities. So that's the response.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Just in case in the Q&A there is a response comprehensive, but along those lines.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. And if you have any other questions you think you can respond to among those, please feel free to make any remark later. Moses, are you access? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. But I seem not to see any question as far as my presentation is concerned. Unless
Okay. No problem.
Check the Q&A, please.
Any two? Yes.
Yes, that's what I was looking at. Unless if somebody can help me and point it out, but I seem not see any.
Okay, I think yes. We'll have maybe the virtual one. Samuel, you have quite a number. Samuel. Samuel, are we together?
Hello?
Samuel, yes.
For Moses, there is a question about the gender in the Q&A, about the gender ministry and how they involve it in the process.
Come again?
There is a question about the gender mainstreaming.
Yes.
Involvement.
You actually have to. Can read for you the question again, Moses?
Yeah.
The question, yes, thanks for the presentation. However, I have not heard. Sorry. However, I've not heard the Ministry of Gender, whether Ministry of Gender is one of the partners implementing WASH initiatives. A gender perspective in all the efforts is crucial in my view. Do you have a comment to that? Please.
Yes, let me start from that one. The Ministry of Gender. This is, we have to agree on the situation in our country that when we're dealing with the Ministry of Gender, that is now we are dealing at with the government at the level of government. And the government sometimes is very slow at adopting such an initiative at the lower stage because we try to connect, but they don't always welcome us when we have not yet showed a certain level of achievement. And that is, I think it is the weakness in the government. You approach them, they see you as a joke. They don't give you even the necessary hearing. Therefore, it would be better to work with them, but we can't wait for them. when we start an initiative at a community level, we organize our people, then we start. If the government picks interest, it will join us. But we shall not wait after we are the people who are facing the challenge. And this one, for example, it so happened because I have talked with people from the Ministry of Water also. The commission, I think it was a commissioner Caristi from Ministry of Water. I met him in Brussels. I met him in Stockholm. I was exhibiting this initiative. He talked that we shall meet and talk. But when I reached here in the country, I tried to contact him. He disappeared. How can you work with such people? If you disappear. For us, we shall start and continue move forward. In case you feel that this initiative can work and you are part of the government, come and work with us. Even if you feel that this initiative is contradicting with national policies, you come and stop us, giving us reasons. But for us, we move forward. Then there is another question from David. Does this system require a water pump? Our system doesn't require water pump because water flows by gravity from the higher level to the lower level. We design it. It is no different from our usual water springs. The Banyankore call it Migano, Banyankore Bachiga. The water comes at the point at which you are supposed to tap it. It falls into the water tank. The water tank has three systems: the tap, the cleaning channel, and the overflow. When it is too much, it overflows from the outflow, the overflow side. The system does not use the water pump. It uses gravity. Water move by gravity. Then I have another question from Kabarisa. How do you minimize and mitigate the risk associated with human pollution of upstream sources? That is the reason why we work with the community, telling them how to deal with waste disposal. We teach them not to, I don't know the language I can use, but not to waste, not to drop their waste in the nearby, to use toilets. Because if you use toilets, automatically, if you defecate near the water source, automatically water will be contaminated, especially during the rainy season. But that is part of the community capacity building we do, where we work with the community, teach them we have to do this in order to preserve our water, not to contaminate it. Then gender mainstreaming. We work with the community because before we implement a system, we have to make a committee, the local committee of the people that are using that well. And on that committee is composed of men, women, and youth. And we ensure all of them take part in the design, implementation, and the management of the system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Samuel. Let's kindly try to keep, to accommodate everyone, we keep the questions a bit short and focused. And also the responses, we can also give the highlight. And through the continuing chat, we can give more information as the case may be. We still have a number of very many questions that are coming in the chat. Please, panelists, look through. Please prepare your responses. But let's mix the approach now and invite in anybody who wishes to also contribute orally. Please do so. I have Mohammed Salih Yassin with his hand up. Mohammed, you're muted. Would you want to make we can take your question? please identify yourself and also specify who your question is targeted to. Mohammed Yassin, please.
Hello. Hello.
We can hear you.
Yeah,
yes,
good.
Please.
Good morning to everyone. I'm Dr. Muhammad Saleh Muhammad Yassin from Sudan. And I wrote my PhD on the Nile Basin transformation. I have a question because in this presentation, there was a mentioning to the regional economic communities. And there is an issue of fragmentation here in these regional economic communities. And the Nile Basin community could be potentially one of these, though the mandate of the NBI is not as specific as a regional economic community. So according to you, do you think that the Nile Basin itself can potentially be developed in the regional economic community through the more integration and more amplification of its mandate? Maybe there couldn't be a clear answer to this question, but consider it as a brainstorming maybe during the forum. And during the 5th Nile Basin Development Forum or the 4th, I don't remember well, in Nairobi, that was discussed. And there were some people who were thinking that potentially it could be, and there are elements to amplify that. And given now the course for the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, that could be also enhanced in order to increase the cooperation within the Nile Basin countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yassin, for that good question. I believe that's directed to Tom. Tom, could you kindly make a comment to it? And if you have, but as he said, it's something, it's open, it's quite a wide question for reflection through the entire NBDF. So we take note and it will be deliberated upon further. As you answer that, you also have some, I think, questions. You can also talk from the chat. Could also present. There's a question here: how NBI is supporting NBI countries in ensuring they meet their targets by 2030. Do you think NBI countries will reach these targets? And what are their supports at medium? And if there are any others, you could respond to them as well. Over to you, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Felix, and thank you, Dr. Yassin, for that question. It's, I think, a mind stimulating question. But usually, these regional institutional arrangements are formed based on certain motivations. For example, for river basin management, like NBI, it's motivated by a number of factors which are envisioned within the objectives of NBI, to do with socioeconomic development, to do with the sustainability of the basin itself, to do with the joint efforts and the benefits of the strength of numbers to have responses that are regional in nature. And of course, the River Basin Organization being a river, the focus or the spatial domain is really the catchment, the basin which it covers. So for the Nile Basin, it could be development that is really hinged around water and how it can solve the challenges of the basin. And of course, for regional economic communities, they are usually motivated by socioeconomic needs, issues related to response to poverty trends, and things like that. But of course, the ultimate that encompasses all these will be the integration that is normally looked at as the pinnacle of all these forms of cooperation. So really, it is something that can be looked into going forward, the formation of a REC. But as you know, there are so many RECs that are even within the operational areas of the Nile Basin. As I showed in the presentation, you'll realize that within the Nile Basin, we have SADC, we have IGAD, we have ESC, we have COMESA, we have EAPP. All these are different economic communities that really try to look at the challenges of the basin in terms of the socio-economic, but also from the context of the water, the river basin organizations, there can be a kind of complementarity of these different formations in response to the various challenges of the basin. So really it is something that can be discussed or debated more going forward, how a REC can be formed to also maybe address the challenges of the basin. But also when you look at the basin, the countries, the parts of the basin that are in the country, for example, DRC, you find a very small part of it is in the basin. A country like Uganda, almost 100% is in the basin. So there are a number of parameters really that need to be looked into in terms of looking at a REC that can address the challenges of the Nile Basin. I also got a question from my friend, colleague, Engineer Vincent De Paul Cabalissa, about how the NBI supports SDG reporting. The reporting on SDGs is really a preserve of the countries. The reporting is done by the countries, and as sovereign states, they have that mandate to do the reporting on SDGs, especially in this case, SDG 6.5.2. But then the role of the institutions like NBI, regional institutions, or river lake basin organizations is really to facilitate the countries in terms of providing information, providing the data and information that is available, and also looking at the facilitating in terms of providing a platform where there can be sharing of these kinds of information and raising awareness like we are doing now. You raise awareness and then the countries are able to know the different obligations or the different roles they have to do in terms of reporting about the SDG 6.5.2. And as recently reported, really in terms of the indicator performance, the countries are doing very badly. I think the recommendation was that the efforts need to be quadrupled if we are to meet the SDG target by 2030. So there is really a lot of communication required, awareness raising, and supporting each other in terms of realization of these SDGs. And the role of these regional formations is really to facilitate, share information, and bring up some kind of strategies which can help the countries have the responsive policies, information, and interventions that relate to the responses of the SDG, especially SDG 6. I think those are the two questions which required my responses.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom. So far, more will be coming in. That's a good analysis of the two issues that are raised. So I said the issue on whether it can become a REC, it continues the same.
Felix, Dr. Nicholas would like to supplement what I have just shared.
Oh, yes, please. Dr. Nicholas?
Yes, I'm responding specifically to the question or the suggestion on the floor of if NBI could be transformed into a REC. The RECs are groupings of regional countries into a legal entity for the purpose of socio-economic integration of the member countries of that grouping. And the idea was initiated by the African Union to be a vehicle for achieving the African Union vision of economic integration of the whole continent of Africa. And so the RECs are seen as the building blocks that eventually will emerge to create this great economic integration of Africa. We already have a lot of challenges in that partner states on the African continent form various groupings. And this is a challenge for the African Union to recognize which ones of them are regional economic communities. It now has officially recognized 8 groupings of partner states. And within our region, we have the East African Community, we have IGAD, and then some of the members of this East African Community are part of SADC. Because these groupings are already on the ground, and some of their membership almost covers a large part of the Nile Basin. Recently, the East African Community was joined by South Sudan, and then by the Democratic Republic of Congo, and all those are Nile riparians. And there is talk of the East African community bringing on board Somalia, and after Somalia, there's also talk to bring on board Ethiopia. So it looks like the existing regs will maybe in the future have a membership that covers most of the riparian countries of the Nile Basin. It is looking unlikely that the NBI can be transformed into a reg, given that the already existing regs that play that role. But it is a challenge at the river basin level that you have all these different groupings. So the NBI has been having an arrangement to go into MOUs to cooperate with the different regs and work on a common agenda, because many of them overlap. A lot of the members of IGAD also fall within the Nile Basin. Of course, all the members of the East African community fall within the Nile Basin. And then we have some 2 members from SADC that are part of the Nile Basin. So there's been an arrangement to try and have cooperation amongst all these regs and RBOs to work on the Nile Basin. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Nicholas, for that addition. Again, as all speakers have said, this is a bigger and wider issue beyond only water and sanitation. So it's on table for consideration by all partners at the different levels as I continue to deliberate upon it. I wish to bring in once again Moses on the second part of the question, which was talking about the countries achieving the SDG targets. You gave us an example for Uganda. You could please answer directly. One, do you think Uganda is going to achieve the SDG targets on overall SDG 6 by 2030? You can give us example on that, but also I bring a question for you to try to maybe, do you have any perspective on what are the other countries in the NBI region, how they are progressing? Or also you as a civil society, do you try to do benchmarking exercises within the region to find out if Uganda is doing badly, how is Kenya doing, how is Sudan doing, and what are the different lessons that we can share between the different NBI countries towards achieving the SDG targets? Moses?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Indeed, Uganda, as a country, we have made some progress, though not as would have been desired. And I will try to focus on the joint monitoring program by UNICEF and WHO, looking at the results as updated as of March this year. Specific to increasing access to water and sanitation services, realize that as far as drinking water is concerned, Uganda is performing at 19% for safely managed. And as far as this access is concerned, Uganda is performing at 41%. That is rural at 42% and urban at 35%, but for safely managed, it is 9% for rural and 45% for urban. This is against the SDG target of 21% for safely managed and 79% for risk access. As we realize that we are still lagging behind, but of course with the concerted efforts, we can see how we can leap a little bit from where we are as we draw near to 2030. What of sanitation service? Sanitation, as far as safely managed is concerned, still looking at the same report, the joint monitoring program of UNICEF and WHO, safely managed sanitation, Uganda is performing at 18%. That is against the SDG target of 22%, with rural at 16% and urban at 22%. For basic sanitation, we are performing at we are performing far much lower, which also calls for the same efforts. But what of hygiene? Hygiene, which we consider to be key, and which in the eyes of so many looks not to be that important. Hygiene, for looking at the same report, basic service, Uganda is performing at 31%, and as you all know, the global target is 100%. How many years to 2030? Very few. What do we need to do in the meantime? That is one of the key areas where Uganda has made a contribution. We are amid some of those challenges. But also, there's also one other key contribution which Uganda has done, which shouldn't go unnoticed. At the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Economic Development, there has been an establishment of the Desk for Climate Finance. What is this meant to do? What is its role? It's about enhanced mobilization of climate financing at the ministry, of course in line with the established mandate of the ministry, but specifically finance the government development priorities. I think there's one participant from the audience who mentioned about the recent 2023 Africa Climate Summit that was held in Nairobi, Kenya. That was on 4th to 6th of September, whereby I'd like to quote the President of the Republic of Kenya, Babati, where he did mention in his own words that Africa does hold the key to accelerating the decarbonization of the global economy, and we are not just a continent rich in resources, but we are a powerhouse of untapped potential, eager to engage and fairly compete in the global markets. It was at the same summit where
Dr. Felix, I think we have challenged to hear our panelists here. So maybe you can also continue with the other panelists because we have challenged here.
Yep. Sorry, Moses, we are not getting you, though I could hear you personally, but a bit scanty. You couldn't hear anything?
No, I'm hearing you loud and clear. I don't know why.
The other part. Okay, can you please just conclude? I think your submission.
So I
try to get closer to the mic so that all participants can hear you.
Okay, I can conclude with the. I wanted to make a comment on the recent 2023 Africa Climate Summit.
Yes.
That was held in Nairobi, Kenya recently, where a total of $4.5 billion was pledged for green development in Africa. This forum, I believe, it did present an opportunity to showcase as African countries there are so many solutions that the world needs to address the climate crisis. And I think I had pointed out the quotation from His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya, where he mentioned that Africa holds the key accelerating decarbonization of the global economy. We are not just a continent rich in resources, we are a powerhouse of untapped potential that is eager to engage and fairly compete in the global markets. I believe taking advantage of this kind of platform, putting our efforts together, then we should be able to address some of these challenges and register fundamental progress.
Okay, thank you very much, Moses. Your presentation was more clearer earlier when you were presenting. It was a bit scanty this time around. Kindly try very much possible to go back to the format you were using before so that all of us from the different, we can also be able to hear what your contribution is. Thank you. Colleagues, please, if you have any more concerns from the audience, kindly put up your hand. As we said, we'll be able to select you. Then you can be able to make your contribution. But I wish to take the direction back Tom, back. Yes, we are discussing again, as I said, the regional economic community. That may be something, beyond. We are giving our views, but this is something beyond what this only webinar can handle, and more important key stakeholders from different areas will be able to address that. But if we go back to the corporations on water, for example, water management, we see a lot of advantages, of course, that come with these regional economic blocks. For example, we see the European Union has been able to come up with the EU Water Directive that, when they flow in line, then all countries are obliged, to use this EU Water Directive, for example. And then, so if you have that line can be able to help. But my question to you, do you see, and you also talked about the policy coordinations between the different countries. For instance, on the East African scene and the LBBC, you can see that we are moving towards some harmonized policies and directive implementation put together within the LBBC. At the NBI level, do you see any future outlook for such a unified policy framework? For example, we can have a framework that all countries of the NBI are able to follow into the same policy document, same policy framework to guide members within the NBI region, even without one REC. Do you see that happening, or how could that be helpful? So.
Thank you, Dr. Felix. I think that's a very pertinent and a good question. Really, the role of NBI and its support in that particular area direction has been very evident in the recent past, or in the time NBI has been on board. Of course, each country has got its specific needs in terms of policy and practice, but at the basin level, there are benefits or advantages that come with the working together as in a sector. For example, almost all our countries have adopted IWRM as a major form of water resource management. If you look at the water policies in most of the countries, IWRM is the main kind of denominator that defines them, before going to the details that the country does. But also, when you look at the NBI or the regional organization like NBI, they bring in the element of capacity development, where the countries are able to level up or kind of harmonize the capacity and competencies that they have in terms of the management and development of the water. There is the element of strength of numbers that comes with resource mobilization. If countries are to have an intervention that is between two or more countries, it is easier to get funding than if a country goes alone, especially for grant funding. So there is also like the global frameworks, like the UN Water Convention for Non-Navigation Waters. It provides kind of a framework which can be a kind of guide that countries can draw from to domesticate the policy or the framework at the national level. But all in all, water is a public good that goes beyond borders. Therefore, going forward, the formation of policies or regional policies and national policies, which are in that direction of promoting it or sustaining the water as a public good, is, I think, the future. And most of these frameworks, like the UN Water, they really look at that as a core to the management of the water resources. And the whole issue of IWRM is actually about holistic management, which is about sustainability and keeping the development of the water optimal, balancing the needs as well as the environmental requirements that are within the resource. So yes, going forward, I think the policies will continue being strengthened, increasing the sharing of the data and information among the countries, increasing the sharing of the practices, increasing the harmonization of the institutional formations. For example, when I look back in the NBI countries, before the NBI, the transboundary offices was a section or a unit under the different departments. But as I talk now, I think 7 or more countries of the NBI have got dedicated departments which are looking at transboundary waters, which shows you the interest that the countries are gaining in terms of elevating the transboundary water and having that kind of institutional formations, therefore informing the policies of the need to strengthen their transboundary capacities in the water resource management. So yes, there is a lot of hope and in the future to have stronger regional policies on water resource management.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. I think that's part of the optimism of such Nile Basin Development Forum, and we hope they can lead to some progress towards unified policies and frameworks and more cooperation. Now, we go back now to the community level participation. We have a question here for Samuel. Samuel, yes, you're working a lot with, of course, with the community level, and yes, as I mentioned when you presented, I mean, these are the approaches that keep life flowing. People cannot go for a single day without water, even if, as you wait for the national interventions, as you wait for a big project which is going to happen in the next 5 years, people need water now, and tomorrow they need water this afternoon. So approaches like this are very, very, very much appreciated, and we continue to support such initiatives at every stage. But my question, as you also presented in your presentation, we're having a bit of a challenge with community involvement or community support. We'd also, after you, I think we shall also get a comment from Moses at the national level towards the same. We have, unfortunately, in the recent past, in case of Uganda, noticed a little bit, should I call it, reduced participation by the communities or dwindling people. Unlike in the 90s, when we were able to, come to a community level, people would come to participate, bring in their labor, people owned these systems and they're able to manage them. But we are progressively being, from the government side, we are progressively noticing that the community ownership of these schemes and participation is slightly going down. We don't know what the causes could be. Moses, shall get your comment. That's why we are having some things like, the community-based maintenance systems, plus trying to strengthen the government participation into the CSO because of the challenges seen in the CBMS systems. So somewhere in your, as you said also, sometimes the money you're putting up, requesting for a design about 80 million, sometimes considered high for the communities. So are you making any initiatives to strengthen the community involvement into this redesign? And if so, are you also considering some non-cash contributions if the community is able to offer labor or any other form of support to the redesign so that they can own up at the systems? And how can we strengthen the community ownership of these schemes and the redesigns that you're proposing? Samuel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Felix. It's very true that the community participation in such kind of projects, it is decreasing. But you also have to understand that the decrease is not the cause of the community, but the way how things have been done for the community. Because in most cases, the project that comes from the community comes to the community when they are well designed, and they don't give the chance for the community members to take part in the design and the process and implementation. And I think it is well intentioned by the people who come to implement them, so that maybe they don't want to give the accountability how they are implementing such kind of projects. But our design is that we take this project from our organization and take it back the community to design what exactly they need for them. In designing, we sit with them, we design with them, and at the end of it, before we start capital construction, by the time we start the real construction, the community is well aware and very contented knowing that what we are going to do is part of them. And therefore, they take part wholeheartedly. And our project, the way it is designed, we are starting from Kigezo region, particularly I come from Rukunjiri, and we engage the community to more especially in non-monetary resources. They supply labor, they also mine the sand locally, and they carry it on their head, they put it on the site. They gather the stones, the gravel, and smash them into aggregate when they are also working collaboratively. And the money we put in is the money for buying the cement, iron bars for constructing, and buying the tap to make sure the system is well complete. And we are very aware that we put more emphasis on working with the community, knowing that if we make a mistake by not working with them and they deviate, they will not only fail to take part, they will also destroy the system. Therefore, we ensure that they own it and they become the real caretakers of the system. That's how we do.
Yeah, thank you very much. Samuel, yes, that's good at a community level. Moses,
hello.
You have a comment on citizen participation?
Yeah, there's that background noise. I don't know where it is coming from.
So,
Okay,
oh, yes,
so,
please.
thank you. I believe now I can be heard much better.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of community participation and ownership, I'll just draw the recent example where that regards the budget cuts or funding in terms of World Bank, where the community was so much concerned. People thought maybe the community would be up in arms saying this and the other, but because of how some of the funds that are allocated to most of the projects is being operationalized or spent, most didn't see the reason as to why. I said whether there is that funding cut or not, it doesn't matter to us. So for you to have that buy-in, have that ownership, there is a need for this common man and woman back at the local government or in the community to see the value of that development project that has come on board. Where does he or she benefit as this common man and woman back at the community level? Then the other aspect maybe I can speak to is the operationalization of the CMBS Plus that you talked about, which also more or less speaks to the same thing. Well, of course, it looks at the establishment of water supply boards right from the local level up to the district, and the members of these would be taking part in key decision making, in planning and budgeting for the resources, and also how to manage how these resources have been is done, which is very, very, very critical. As long as there is meaning and greater involvement or key stakeholders, including these local communities, then they will be able to attach value and at the end of the day have that buy-in and ownership of whatever development projects that are bringing on board, as in the spirit of leaving no one behind and ensuring that the services that are being offered to them are not only of good quality, but they are also sustainable without necessarily leaving anyone behind. I thank you.
Okay, thank you, Moses. Samuel, take note of your frustrations in getting contact with the ministry officials raised in the chat. But please feel free. We have a ministry headquarters located in Luzira. We have several departments. This would be most relevant. We have a Department of Rural Water Supply and Sanitation. If you come there, you can be able to direct it to the right officers who can be able to support you. But we also have regional offices. For example, in the Southwestern region, we have offices in Imbarara, right, I think opposite Ministry of Works, opposite police there. We have the regional offices there. We have what we call the Water and Sanitation Development Facility. You can be able to approach several staff there. They can be able to assist and be able to really to share into your innovations so they can be scaled up. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming close to the end. Please, if you have any last questions.
Hello.
So may kindly mute. Kindly mute, please. Yes, thank you. Please, if you have any other comments, post in the chat or raise your hand. So as we come to the conclusion of this webinar. But as you do so, I will have one last, we have one last question to Tom to probably to respond to as we take any other last ones. Tom, you highlighted different levels of different cooperative arrangements which have been within the NBI region. Maybe you could mention something about the collaborations between all of them, the big ones and the small ones, and the bilateral ones. And maybe you tell us a bit, if we've taken stock, for example, you gave an example of the Kagera River Basin Organization, which closed. What could be the lessons that were learned from this bilateral arrangement that failed, I think, to proceed? In light of, at the same time, we are seeing some new other ones trying to emerge, like what you presented on the Lake Edward and Albert River Basin Organization, which is also trying to come up between Uganda and Congo. So what lessons do we learn from the failure or the closing of the Kagera between Uganda and Tanzania as we try to resurrect one for the River Albert Nation? Or is it also, from your comment, is it necessary to have such a bilateral organization since we have the overall NBI framework? What could be your comment on that?
Thank you, Dr. Felix, for those very good comments and questions. Regarding the partnerships, it can really be a continuum of cooperation, ranging from full cooperation to collaboration and loose coordination. And from those, within the different institutions, which we have commonly called spaghetti because of them being so many, they are kind of mechanisms that are developed to enhance the synergies and also, kind of increase or optimize on the resources which are available for these different initiatives to operate. And of course, in most cases, these resources are targeting or intended to benefit the same people in the region. Therefore, working together, it helps in terms of minimizing duplication, optimizing the resources, but also having a common understanding and standardization of how we can approach the responses at the regional level. For example, with NBI, we have memoranda of understanding with IGAD. We have memoranda of understanding with the East African Community. We also have memoranda of understanding with the other organizations which are not, which are global. For example, the International Water Management Institute, NEPAD, among others. So we do these mechanisms or tools like MOUs or memorandum of understanding, which articulate the kind of areas where we can work together, how we can work together. Beyond the memorandum of understanding, we also develop what we call collaboration plans. Those collaboration plans are able to identify the key activities that you can engage into and can complement each other's different plans. Then when you are developing at the lower level, the action or the annual plans, you normally have to reflect on those MOUs and see how you can implement activities which can work for the betterment or furtherance of the intentions of those different memorandum of understanding. So there are those efforts which are done to keep the partnerships going, but also, of course, like I said, we promote each other. If there is an activity that is planned under LVBC, but with an experience in NBI, we can share and be able to support each other and make that activity work faster. Similarly with IGAD and other organizations, there are those benefits that come out of these partnerships. And of course, when we have big events like now the NBDF 7, we have invited all of them, they'll be coming, and that will again will provide an avenue, a platform where they can be sharing of the experiences from the different institutions. Regarding the formation of institutions and how they are nurtured and how they sometimes get decommissioned, this is for a number of reasons. One, it starts from the motivation or the stimulation that caused their formation. Sometimes their ambitions and sometimes their reasons which might not be sustainable beyond a long time after the formation. For example, the case of KBO. KBO developed an action plan which covered a number of interventions, and those interventions required funding, external funding. And that time, for example, the Rusumo hydroelectric power project was one of the projects that had been identified under KBO. Because of the funding, and of course, the 90s, there was a lot of economic difficulties, and also the political landscape of the region. So there was a problem, and it ended up stifling or constraining the development or the sustainability of the Kagera Basin organizations. So it was decommissioned, but some of the outputs of it or the results of it were mainstreamed in NBI. The case in point again is the Rusumo, which was picked up and taken and implemented. Now we are talking of commissioning it as a flagship project for Nile Basin Initiative. But even other projects which had been identified under the KBO and were kind of shelved, these were kept in the focal point ministries. That was foreign affairs as well as water for the water-specific activities. And these were, again, rejuvenated under the Kagera River Basin Management Project, which is now, like I mentioned in the presentation, being envisaged to become a permanent institution for Kagera activities. Therefore, it finds home in the Kagera River Basin Management institution. So the lesson here is that the initiatives that are formed, they come up with activities. It is very, very important for them to be mainstreamed in the institutional frameworks or in the international institutions so that they can be able to be picked up at any time going forward. Therefore, documentation is very, very important. And also the issue of sustaining these institutions through the country efforts is also very, very important. Most of them sometimes are dependent on external funding. When that funding dries up or the global trends change, it becomes a challenge of keeping these very important institutions running, which of course compromises the overall mission of sustaining the water resources of the Nile and others. So there are a number of lessons, but quickly can I think of those in terms of going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom, for your wide sharing and knowledge on the basin. I'll take one last question from, I think, Robert Limlim. He has his hand up. Let's have one last comment as we bring this to a close. Robert?
Yes, good morning, Felix. How are you?
Good morning.
I was very intrigued on the discussion around the involvement of communities, especially community participation, promoting community participation in the development and the management of water systems. I think this is an area all of us need to prioritize in the future as we look at the mitigation measures we put in as a global changes we're having. I think the the advantage of having communities to be very involved has so many pluses and positives to the global warming mitigation measures. The first one is the highest level of bringing in a large population of the world. For us, a large population of citizens of Uganda to know about the global changes, the measures that can be made, individual and community, as well as their roles in everyday living. I think you will notice, Felix, that the idea of making sure that we move away from the closed technical property of these global warming and mitigation measures into a mass action is really what we need now, because there are so many disjointed actions as we move along the continuum of the fight against the global warming and the destruction of the destruction and degeneration of our environment. First of all, we know so much, but the community knows so little. We do as much in policy, but what's happening at daily level on the environment and the ecosystem is a different wavelengths. I think this is a measure that we really need to read very closely so that we can encourage and shift more the center of gravity of action to communities, not just to provide small little basic labor, but really to be at the center and the driver's seat of the mass action against the degeneration of the ecosystem. I would like to invite,
Thank you.
I would like to invite Felix, the team, to look at the community demand-driven approach, the CDD approach. This one really has very good characteristics: participation, local empowerment. It brings in the demand-responsive interventions as well as enhance local capacity, together with the downward accountability systems and transparency. And then lastly, I would like to request that we look more at thinking about community maintenance systems, especially for the infrastructure that we put in there for water supply and also for water conservation and ecosystem development. I think there's much more to develop about this, Felix, in programs, and we have some experience, but I think the colleagues should talk about this more in the sessions of the webinars. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert, with those last words. I think it was more of a comment and stressing a need taken note of. And that brings us to the close of our time that we had for this webinar. Please, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, the audience, participants. You've all stayed in for this 100 minutes or so. Please, thank you. And the panelists and presenters, thank you very much for your good knowledge that you've shared with us. Please continue in the chat and also on the forum website. If you have any other comments, any comments that you think should be taken care of, this will inform our continued discussions through the process. And again, thank you to the organizers for this good interaction. We look forward to invite you to participate in many other more series that are going on within this organization. Please, thank you all. Organizers, do you have any last word?
The Nile Basin Initiative Secretariat would like to thank Dr. Felix for the excellent moderation for this session. And we would like to thank also the panelists and the speakers for the informative and outstanding presentation, and also the excellent panel discussion. Allow me also to thank the team here at NileSec, who did a lot of work behind the scene. Dr. Aza, Mr. Patrick, and Mr. Suede, and Ms. Marushka. I also have in the room Dr. Michael Kiza, and Mr. Vincent. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I just would like to invite all the participants who attended this important session about water supply and sanitation to attend also the tomorrow morning session at 9 a.m. also about the conjunctive use of transboundary surface and groundwater resources. So tomorrow at the same time, we have also this interesting session. Please come and attend that session. Thank you. Thank you.